But
You know what? I'm going to tell you something really funny. I was just about to drink this.
Ah,
Oh my God,
that'd
dude.
be a whole different
Now I know I'm sleep deprived.
I'm
It's
gross.
horrible. Yeah, I was attending a 5 a.m. session at MWC.
Brutal.
Yeah, it was not fun.
No bueno,
I
dude.
hate remotely attending these global conferences, sitting in.
Totally.
All right, let's
All right,
rock and roll, baby. Here.
Let's hit it. All right.
All right, get your lighters or your candles up. Ready?
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's going to prioritize on Clubhouse. I see the flickery flick if I'm talking.
Yeah. No, I think you sound
Just so it comes through. I don't know. We'll go with it.
We'll go with it.
rock and roll,
All right,
baby.
so we're gonna do some little hairband action.
Oh yeah.
Man, actually,
Hair.
feeling the
Yeah.
80s love, man.
Oh, very important part. We got to do.
Oh no way.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
my
Yes.
Okay, ready?
Do you know what this is? It's too much metal for one hand.
Ooh. Love it.
We both lie silent still in the dead of the night. Although we both lie close together, we feel miles apart inside. But there's something I said or something I did my words not come out right. We tried not to hurt you, I tried. That's why I say the rose is this storm. Just like every night, as a storm. Just like every cowboy sings a sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Yeah, it does. Listen to our song playing on the radio.
Played in Clubhouse, baby.
They say love's a game, easy come and easy go. But I wonder, does he know? Has he ever felt like this? And I know that you'd be here right now. Could have let you know somehow. Guess every rose has its thorn. Just like every night has its thorn. Yeah, it's like every cowboy sings a sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Here's the big bridge. It's been a while now, still feel so much pain. Like the never cuts here, the wound heals, but the scar remains. Every rose has its thorn, just like every night as it's dawn. Yeah, just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its own. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Now let's get off to something that's not so serious.
All right. All right.
You know what? I know this dude has been wanting to get on the show for the longest time, so he had all this pent up, yeah, all this pent up energy and desire to perform on IoT Coffee Talk, and so just a little bit of.
I love it.
How did we even end up doing this? I think it was like we were inspired by Wayne's World, right? So IoT
think
Coffee
it was.
Talk was originally sort of, that SNL, what was that, Coffee Talk, with, that whole skit thing that Mike Myers did back in the day. But then we bastardized it. Yeah. Well, it's all Mike Myers inspired, quite frankly, right? Because it was Coffee Talk plus Wayne's World.
Yeah, I think your life is inspired by Mike Myers.
Now, yeah, we're exactly.
That's what I'm thinking.
Eventually,
Well, welcome to the show, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, introduce yourself. You're obviously a tech novice. You know nothing about tech.
Yeah.
Yes, and a musician.
Almost zero.
Novice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I get on Zoom calls for work, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, studio, whatever," and I'm like, "No. They just give you all this stuff when you move to Austin."
That's what happens. They just give it to you.
Why don't you take two?
Yeah.
No, I've been doing this for a while. Obviously, Leonard. Actually, I've known all of you guys for a little while. Been doing the IoT Edge thing for about 7 years. Started at Dell, then Dell Technologies. Left there about 15 months ago to join a company called ZEDEDA. We're all about orchestration for edge computing. And I built the ecosystem there. So I've been around the block in terms of working in the landscape. Similar to you guys.
Yeah, sounds great. It sounds great and is super tough.
And we've been rode hard.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, and we just want to welcome Stephanie back. We're just so glad to have you back. She's our rock.
Yes.
She's the rock of the show.
I'm glad to be back. It's been a little lonely without you guys.
Yeah, well, we've been lonely without you, even though,
Yeah. And Stephanie,
Rob, you're just not great company,
I know, I'm not. Stephanie, you're about, 100 miles outside of Austin?
Yep, not far. It's about an hour, 45-minute drive for me.
Yeah. So Stephanie's out there in Bandera. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Stephanie, did you fare okay in the crazy Texas weather?
We had a rough week. No electricity, off and on, power outages, no water, busted well pipe, busted well pump, but now everything's on track and lots of thousands of dollars later we're just happy to have electricity. That was the one thing.
Little things. I mean, it's crazy. So I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people have heard about what's going on in Texas. Yesterday it was 80 degrees, and last week it was 6.
Yeah, that's loony. That's straight up
crazy. Dude.
Yeah.
That's just psychotic weather right there. It was like it was so. It was just like Texas. What else? Like we're going through all the seasons in a 24-hour period.
So,
we could do that.
Yeah. So I've come up with a new category. It's not beyond extreme weather. It's WTF weather. Right. I mean, that's just simply ridiculous.
I love the meme that people were floating around that said that this weather is just disrespectful, and I'm like, yeah, it's disrespectful.
Right.
I think that's an understatement. But hey, welcome to IoT Coffee Talk. To this week, we're going to be talking about trust in IoT and at the edge. And it was funny. We were like kind of bantering back and forth before the this show, and Rick Bellotta, he kind of quipped and said, "What's trust?" And I think that's a really damn good question. What is trust? Because
this better not be another blockchain episode, dude.
No. Actually, let's talk about trust without talking about blockchain at all. That would be really. And anyone who mentions Bitcoin, we'll get Stephanie's husband to hop into a helicopter and pay a visit.
Is there like a birthday,
you know what I mean?
Slap emoji in this new reactions feature?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jason, you and I have had conversations about trust. Why don't we start off with you, man? I know that you know trust. I know you're big into it. And share your perspective, dude.
I mean, obviously, trust there's various different forms, but it's a good question what it is. I'll start by saying, it's a complex relationship between value received and your privacy and different elements with that. And when it comes to technology, it's basically if you get value and you trust who's providing you that value, your privacy generally goes out the window to an extent. And then it's finding that balance between privacy and value. As that balance gets broader, then you start to see more and more people building trusted relationships. I mean, it works the same in people's relationships. You have your circle of trust. Usually, it's your family closest to you. Not everybody in your family, usually. And then you're kind of your closest friends, and then those friends have trust. So there are these kind of trust circles. And as you start to make connections, you interchange ideas and thoughts and whatnot. But it's always that balance of privacy and value. The same thing happens in Internet of Things. Same thing happens in connected systems where you start with these kind of intranets, you're closed in, it's your circle of trust. And then as you see reasons to add value and you're okay with privacy, or you're not concerned with IP loss, whatever, then you start seeing these things interconnect, whether it's in the supply chain, it's the city to the person, it's all about that trust relationship. And so we've been working on this for a while. The ultimate potential here is interconnected ecosystems where everything starts to kind of come together and balance that, the value versus privacy. But you can't possibly do that with one person owning the trust, one company. We've got some pretty big players out there that are aggregating all these services. You must decentralize the trust. I'm not going to say blockchain because it's not just about blockchain.
I
got triggered.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste. Decentralize it, and you have to enable technology to go build it. Because I have to say, you can't take people out to dinner one by one fast enough to build trust at a global scale. You need some help from technology. So. Anyway, so it's a complex relationship, but that's kind of how we've been looking at it. Is how do you start to build, intertwine these things?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, it's just that, when we think about IoT and trust and stuff like that, you have a lot of people talking about device attestation or things like that. Does this device pretending to be something really well, or is it legit? When you're getting all this telemetry from all these things out there, and you assume it's real, it's authenticated, it presented its unique identity and security token or certificate or whatever. And most people are like, well, that should be good enough, right? But I certainly hear about people worrying about, I'm hearing about stuff, people like proving where chipsets and where things are coming from these days, actually, and where they're being made, and having attestations and stuff around that. I just had my mind blown last night. I mean, I know we all talk about security. I know Leonard saw this, but I'm just going to put this here on the screen.
Oh, man.
I don't know if you guys know who this woman is. She is a journalist for the New York Times. Nicole. She did a talk. It was like the Center for Digital Transformation. I think it was UC, maybe it was UC Irvine or whatever. Anyway, they had a big deal last night. A zillion people were in on this call where they're interviewing her and talking. And if you think you know how bad things are in the privacy and security world, you probably are barely scratching the surface. It's a lot worse than you think it is. It was one of those hour and a half sessions where you're just like, oh God, we're like right on the edge and we didn't even realize it.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Just go to the other rooms in Clubhouse. 90% of them are in the industry of what you're talking about. I mean, they're basically bartering privacy and doing all kinds of crazy crap and compromising trust, compromising privacy, and they're promoting it. I mean, there's a huge industry.
I think the challenge for a lot of us, and especially on the consumer side, as we start to think about the business side, hey, Marc, is that we end up investing ourselves in these technologies, and we start to trust them, and we start to, and in many cases on the business side, we're financially invested in them. So it's so hard to turn back. Then the rules change, or then something gets broken, and then you lose all trust. Just like what's happening with all the social media platforms is they're robbing us blind, and some consumers just don't care. I think all of us in the tech world are very aware of it, and we care. And it's just frustrating because they start off on a path that you don't believe that they're going to go down, and then they do. But there are others on the consumer side that are so they're vulnerable, and they just don't care, and they opt in to these apps and to these systems, and they all ready to say, here, take everything I have. And I think that's become the norm, and half the time they don't even know when they click accept that they're saying yes to all of that. And so we have that mentality on the business side. I think that businesses have to do a better job at gaining the trust of their customers and really trying to provide, like you said, Jason, that balance, because we're never going to get it right. I mean, there's just no way to get it completely right, but we have to keep on working on the issue. And it's those companies that forget and kind of push that back, and then something bad happens. And I mean, if it's blasted out there on the internet, like SolarWinds in Austin, it could be very, very vulnerable and just take down a company. And really, they have a whole lot of cleanup to do. What happens now?
Stephanie, you're on mute, by the way.
Oh, on my Clubhouse?
Yeah.
I did that.
Bummer.
So do I turn Clubhouse on and turn the volume off on Clubhouse?
Yeah,
Yes.
volume off.
Just have
and
it
then
sitting
the
in front of
mic
you.
on.
And
Okay.
yes. So
Okay,
right now,
to
you're
our
on mute.
audience, yeah, Stephanie just said like
I'm
the
a
most
newbie
awesome
on Clubhouse.
stuff. Yeah,
This
she's
is
a
my
newbie.
first-
Words of wisdom.
She's a newbie, but she also said some awesome stuff. So make sure that
Absolutely.
you tune
I'm
into
a virgin
www.
Clubhouse girl.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was muted during my intro, so they're like, "Who the hell's that guy?"
Hopefully not for the song.
Well,
But
I mean, Stephanie, exactly. So that's why I say it's an intersection of value and privacy. When you start building trust with a Facebook or an Apple or an Amazon or whatever, it's easy to use the consumer example. You will start to give up some privacy if you get value. I would actually contend that the problem with privacy, it's as much to do with people as it is to do with businesses that are trying to take advantage of it. Because I mean, when's the last time you have a conversation with someone and all of a sudden, you're talking about some product and all of a sudden an ad for that product shows up?
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually go change your privacy settings right then? You're like, well, that's kind
No.
of creepy. And then you just keep doing what you're doing.
It's
I think
creepy.
there's going to be some major breaches in the next year or two that's going to wake people up. But until that happens, people are just going to keep doing exactly what you've said, Stephanie, is like kind of let it go because I'm getting value from it. And I'm trusting these entities until that trust is eroded.
yeah, but here, I want to back up for a minute though, is because I think there's, we don't want to confuse privacy with trust, right? I think we're talking about trust in terms of the quality of our relationship with certain entities, but I think very fundamentally, when we talk about the quote unquote infrastructure of trust, and this is something you and I have talked about, Jason, it really boils down to provenance, right? Really being able to, like what Rob, you were saying, attest and authenticate the identity of something as being what you think it is, right? And it's not just limited to personas or people or devices, or things. It's also content. It's transactions that happen between entities. Can you trust those transactions? And then layered on top, underneath a lot of that, all of that are going to be the security and then the privacy mechanisms and infrastructures that garner trust. But I think that's where, when you listen to people talk about security, privacy, and trust, where people start to talk past each other. You know what I'm saying? And so
They go hand in hand. It's like privacy generally in a lot of these situations is something that we're opting in or opting out of. There's some things that we have control of, but we try to have control of. But trust is something that's earned from our vendor relationship.
Absolutely.
That's not something that just is an on-off switch or something that we can control.
Or because when you think about the deep fake problem, it boils down to that's all mostly content. I mean, there's a lot of ways that that whole supply chain of coming up with fake crap, it's a pretty extensive supply chain or process. But fundamentally, can you trust content? When you see these things, these doctored up deep fake content of, let's say, Obama having presumably said something that he didn't. How do you, or maybe Trump? How do you in the future authenticate and trust content? And I think that's like one of the biggest issues that we're going to have going forward. Forget about the social fake news stuff, promotion of fake news. What about just this completely believable content that shapes the way people think and believe? And what people believe, and so
First step is you got to want to believe it versus you want to be influenced by. A lot of people are influenced by the fake stuff because that reinforces their beliefs. So that's a whole other show. But
you're right. It's another show. Yeah, maybe a show that we don't do.
Yeah,
It's another show with a lot of alcohol involved.
Yeah, totally.
we should play the entire Poison catalog instead of that.
Shots.
Ballads only. Ballads only.
Maybe some extreme, more than words. That would be nice.
More than words.
Oh,
Yes. But you know what? It feels like so many of these systems sounds a whole lot like reinforcement learning and machine learning, where we're just going to pile on what you know, which sounds like what's happening in all these echo chambers on Facebook and everywhere else. It's crazy.
I think what I worry about the most when it comes to trust is, we think about we will become so. The ecosystem and the interconnection of these systems will become so valuable in certain supply chains or in certain operational systems is when, like you said, Rob, how do we trust the data that's coming in is the real data from the system that we believe that we're trusting from. So it's when we get to the intelligence level where we think we have everything as much secure as we can, but there may be some kind of data that's coming in that is just completely not coming from the systems that we think it's from. And that's part of the vulnerabilities that we'll have in our systems is that's not true data. How do we identify that? And is the IoT kind of vendor ecosystem really aware and looking at that? Even with the autonomous side, we're starting to just pull all these pieces together, but one little slip up, it could really take down it could be a snowball effect like we saw in Texas, right? If we don't have systems in place.
Yeah. I mean, Rob, really quickly before, I think we'd love to hear from Marc about, all the stuff happening in Europe. But before we get there, I just wanted to respond to what you're saying about the reinforcement learning. Here's the scary thing. As you have all these new threats that are to trust that are forming. The thing is that reinforcement learning is about the system experiencing compromises before it can then protect you or predictively, detect based on behavior analytics that you're going to be attacked or compromised, right? And that's a scary thought, right? Because the leading edge of the fake stuff and the things that compromise trust are always going to lead our ability to counter them. And AI doesn't solve the problem, unless anybody on the panel wants to disagree with that. But, I actually got in a conversation very recently about this. And, anytime that I hear anyone say, hey, AI is going to solve our problems, I go, you're so full of shit. But I'll listen and I'll smile. Yeah, it's like, man, you don't know how any of this crap works. So, you really have to think through this stuff and not, don't go, shut up. Don't even start, or we're going to send you a different room. Go to your room.
Go to the blockchain room.
It's AI plus blockchain.
5G on
they miss blockchain.
Oh, my God.
In the equation.
Go for it.
So, tell us, from the land of GDPR.
I know, right?
How do you guys look at trust? How's it all shaping up there? That's you, Marc.
GDPR, it sucks. Actually, it's interesting. So when you get a user that says, "Hey, and I'm based in Europe, so delete all the data that you have on all your servers and all your backups and the backups of your backups," that's a real thing. So how can you prove to the government and to police that this user doesn't exist anymore in any backup? Sorry, I have a visitor.
Hola.
Yeah, Marc.
But I wanted to ask another question. That's depressing. Yeah. So okay. I have an open question actually for everyone. But how can we accelerate the adoption of IoT? Come on.
By making it trustworthy.
No, maybe we have Jason that maybe he has some. The top two... I don't think it's about trustworthy. But,
well, I think trust is part of it. The top two problems with IoT, really any technology, has nothing to do with technology. It's first, it's use case. Is there a reason to add risk and complexity to my life to do anything?
Yeah.
Second one is stakeholder complexity. Everyone talks about OT, IT, LOB, but that scares me. That's not my job. I'm afraid of getting, some dirty laundry uncovered. I don't have the skills. That's the problem. Then it's fragmentation. People want to figure out the landscape, and that I think it's writing itself. And you're going to see like a very small set of people doing infrastructure, and then domain knowledge and apps on top is what goes. So that's a transition. Then you get into security and management and all that, because you don't care about that up front. It's like, let me go develop an app and you build a use case, do a POC, but then you realize, holy crap, how am I going to actually deploy this? Then that's like where ZEDEDA gets interesting, is we talk with people up front. They're like, I don't understand what you do. I can do that on my own, management, orchestration. After you actually do a POC and you're actually going to get out of the POC friend zone, as I would call it, then you go, really
POC friend zone. It's a new concept that I learned today.
You just can't underestimate the people. That's the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah.
So, Jason, are you saying that you just can't trust people?
Well, I mean,
Maybe.
We instrumented a gas tank or a propane tank for a farmer a couple years back, and this is one of the problems. This farmer has microgreens, and if he loses propane, everything gets destroyed in the freeze, and he loses everything. $5,000 overnight. The propane person and the farmer get visibility to that tank now. What's the level of propane? The propane guy would like to have the tank go to 0 so that when they drive out, they maximize their trip charge. The farmer freaks out if it's not 100%. Because he doesn't want to lose his crops. And it turns out after some time, they built a trusted relationship. And if it was 40% full, they were both cool. That was the average, and so those dynamics with IoT, you instrument the physical world, they start to play out. And that's one of the challenges.
You know what? A light bulb just went off. So the reason why IoT doesn't work is the dirty laundry problem.
Oh, yeah. It's a big part of it.
And there's another one. Also, the unauthorized lunch break problem.
Yeah.
Because if you have systems always monitoring everything, that means that rules are applied at close to 100%. And humans generally don't like to, be completely, absolutely controlled and monitored, right? We like to occasionally sneak out for a cigarette break or, whatever.
Yeah.
Surveillance.
I was going to say another great
surveillance
example of the dynamics. A startup had made a beer keg measurer. You put it under the keg and they put it in the bar. The bar owner thinks it's great because they can meter all the beer. But guess what? The bar staff, it broke the whole ecosystem because the bar staff couldn't give free drinks to people that would then come back and bring more people. And so
about the free drinks, baby.
It's just how it works. And meanwhile, as I was consulting with these guys, I'm like, okay, so you're pissing off the bar staff, and that's not good because it's part of this network effect. No. By the way, who has the money in this equation? It's the distributors. It's the Anheuser-Busch's. Attach it to the keg, give them value through all of the money chain, and you still get the value at the bar, but just be careful about disrupting that thing. You got to follow the money too, is another big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I have an experience about this dirty laundry thing, and because it is dirty laundry, it's so much about IoT is accountability, and is this really happening? And so, since back when I invented IoT in the '90s with Al Gore, my first startup I was in when I got out of the Navy was called Oktoberfest of Things. Yes. I was at this startup called Real Time Data. I know it sounds really imaginative, but of course we were monitoring vending machines, which is what you always hear about with IoT, right? And so anyway, we're building all this technology, and part of it was a story about how you should do IoT. It's just don't talk about IoT. We just focus on the one thing you're doing and get value from it. And so that was a good thing. But you never know when you're going to be surprised by what's going on. When you open up the curtain and have visibility to things, you think it's a good thing, but it turns out the customers may not want that visibility. So to make a long story short, so that you realize that we're in an episode of The Sopranos, when we were doing the vending stuff, most vending machines are owned by all these vending companies. They're not owned by Pepsi and Coke and all them. Right. And a whole lot of them were all based in and around Philadelphia, and they're in northern New Jersey and stuff like that. And I remember us doing pilots, and we had our black box, our gear. We had because remember it's actually classic industrial IoT where you're having to retrofit everything. So you can imagine back in the early and mid 90s, it's dumb vending machines. And we're having to make them smart. And we're putting cabling in. We're monitoring when the little spirals are moving the chips off and how many quarters are in the change box. And so we were doing inventory management basically, and we could predict how much money a machine should be making and forecasting and a whole bunch of great stuff that we didn't even think about. And I just remember we went to I forgot what town in New Jersey, and we're meeting with all these executives after we'd done a pilot, and it was a huge success. Not only did we optimize, the route drivers were not needlessly visiting machines that they didn't need to visit because now they knew exactly what the inventory, what they had to bring, what they didn't. But we also showed we did merchandising. We found out preferences, what people really wanted. And I just remember the meeting, they're like, wow, this is really great information. This is like the future. But I don't know if we want to know all this stuff about how many quarters are in the vending machine and in forecasting how much it should be making. And we're so naive. Yeah. We're like, what are you talking about? Well, it turns out the whole business, they love the fact that it's a cash business, a quarter business. Yeah. And they are totally skimming off the top everywhere in this deal. And they actually didn't want visibility. They didn't want us telling them how much a vending machine should be making.
Because it's a cash business.
No.
It was just knee deep in crime and quasi. But it was like quasi mafia kind of stuff. And we're like, oh shit, we're just gonna walk out backwards.
You're like, bow out.
Yeah. Well, it's like, when you mentor startups and you talk about some bizarre black swan event that could screw up the whole thing. I was like, this is one of them. We were knocking it out of the park. Everything was a huge success. And it turns out you're dealing with a bunch of mafia guys. Yeah.
That was a TMI situation where they're like, no, we don't want any of that data.
Well, Rob, think about it from the consumer's perspective. What's one of the more pleasurable, enjoyable experiences of interacting with a vending machine? It's occasionally doing a kung fu kick to get that Dorito bag loose, right?
Right.
You don't want to go to jail because you went like a friggin' sidekick into
get your arm stuck inside the machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on.
My kid climbed halfway into one before.
Really?
Yeah, at one of those places that has nothing but games, big game room. And I only found out because he sends me the video of his other friend videoing him halfway in there. And I was like, really?
Oh, no way.
Yeah, kids get stuck in vending machines.
Yeah, if IoT had its way, we would never have America's most ridiculous videos that show. Think about it.
Another dynamic that I would bring up, the one of the challenges. So it's the people, the use cases is going to market. There's all those platforms and whatever. But it's about domain knowledge ultimately, and it's also about who has relationships. So one of the interesting dynamics, if you look at kind of the legacy back when Rob invented it with Al Gore and all that, there was a lot of people have been doing this for a long time, but they're doing it with kind of legacy ways of doing things. They have the channel that they've built out for many, many years, system integrators that roll trucks every year, every day and deploy stuff, whether it's surveillance or, factory control systems, whatever. Meanwhile, all the new kids on the block developing IoT technologies, AI or whatever, they have no relationships in the channel. And so how do you provide a transition path? Rarely ever does the incumbent lead the transition to the modern way of doing things. It's always some challenger. But the challenger in this market has to get to the channel that the incumbent has. So you have to create this crossover. And that's one of the really fundamental, challenges within IoT is you've got to merge the two.
Yeah. It follows the same logic as working as a government contractor and a subcontractor. Those government contractors have those relationships. They win the bid. And they bring in all the subcontractors. So there's generally one or two main contractors that own that relationship, that have that relationship. And everybody else falls into place because they're working alongside or behind or whatever in that chain. And in the government contractor world, if you're not one of those main contractors and you don't have the relation, if you're small, a startup, you generally will develop the relationships with the main contractors so you can get those big bids and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars going through the paperwork to do it. But in this case, it kind of follows that same logic. You got to have there are certain companies out there in our ecosystem that really own the customer and have the relationship. We all know that this is a massive ecosystem play and it's who's working with who, and there's a lot of co-opetition going on right now. But
and they have a
lot of those that are dying too.
Trust.
It comes back to trust, and that it's interesting. Actually, we've talked about Alvarium, Leonard, before.
Yeah.
This whole, data confidence fabrics.
Very, very cool stuff.
Not just ledger technology is one thing, because ledger technology basically tells you you've got where did the crap data go.
Good man.
It doesn't tell you that whether it's real or not. But these trust fabrics that I've been working on for a while with folks in the community, like we launched it from Dell, Project Alvarium, which literally there's a webinar right now on it, which is kind of ironic. So I'm missing it, but it's about this notion of trust fabrics where it's not one thing. It's root of trust is silicon, open API stacks, confidential computing, immutable storage, so you can't tamper with it. Yes to some ledger, all these different things. If you combine them together in the right way, this starts to create a trusted system.
Yep.
And then the kicker with this concept, data confidence fabric, is that you attach scores to that data as it flows through. So as it flows through a trust fabric, it's like, oh, you had all these elements. Well, it's a higher percentage trust score. And then you just send it off into the ether, with the metadata saying, hey, I'm willing to share this. This is my privacy value curve. It's this much money or it's free. Here's how confident you can be in it. 80% confident. Are you cool? Do you want to have it? Do you want to buy it? If you're a nuclear plant, you're probably looking for 100% confidence. But if you're turning on your lights or doing something, whatever, like, I'll go with 70%.
Yeah.
Right.
That's this relationship. It's the same thing with the circle of trust intersecting. This is what's going to happen long term. This notion of how do I use technology to mimic how I build relationships in real life. So it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, you definitely check out. There's a lot of cool forums that are starting to build this. That's the next big conversation.
Yeah. And, it's weird. All cool conversations happen in Barcelona for some reason.
Yes.
It's
Barcelona.
I know. Barcelona. Is it Barcelona or Barcelona?
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
I want to get a blackberry mojito at Barcelona.
So
How's that? Did I do good, Stephanie?
No.
you know what? Just to give Jason some love, if we could take an off ramp just for a few moments around trust and let Jason talk about the new stuff that his company's been talking about with their orchestration, Project Eve, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, why orchestration?
Tell us all about it.
Explain that to the dummies
Rob,
out here.
I'll pay you the $5 later. A little something extra in your paycheck this week.
I'm a dummy.
Real quick. So ZEDEDA, what we do is it's all about orchestration. Orchestration, what is that? So that's basically how do I secure both hardware and applications distributed out in the wild, outside of the data center. The data center is a solved problem. Lots of cool companies doing that. But when you get out of the data center and you've got compute in the field, you need a very, very strong zero trust security model. You need to manage the scale factor. You need to run autonomously. If you lose connection, keep going. So all that kind of stuff. So that's what we do. But the base is open and it's part of Linux Foundation. So EVE-OS from Linux Foundation means you do not get locked into whatever backend console you use to manage stuff. That's very important because, if we disappear, you can go do what you want and build your own thing. The other reason why you need an open base for edge computing, IoT, whatever, is that it's so fragmented. If you have a proprietary base for the edge hardware, that OS and all that, you have to pick up the phone for everything out there. Not possible. You need to let the community, including the hardware providers, adapt to that kind of universal OS. And then they pick up the support burden, and then people can use those open APIs to build their own stuff on top. And it's important that it's vendor neutral. That's why we put it into Linux Foundation. This, EVE-OS is part of Project Eve. It's within LF Edge. So, really cool stuff. We just announced yesterday an integration with Azure IoT, but it's basically you pick your hardware, you pick your app, you pick your cloud. We're not in the data path at all, so that's not scary. And just kind of run with it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Get to work with a lot of different people and. It is what it is. So,
what's your proprietary technology?
What's that?
What's your proprietary technology? What
the commercial part is our cloud. Our SaaS-based cloud offer, easy button. And for this is speaking of the skills thing. If I'm a field technician and I don't know a lick about IT, I can grab a box with EVE-OS on it. I plug it in, connect power and network. I leave, and everything can be done remotely with clicks of buttons. And that's important because you got to bridge that skills gap. And the fact that it's SaaS. So yeah, we commercialize the back end, but we use the open APIs developed, within vendor neutral EVE-OS so that you don't get locked in. It's a nice warm fuzzy for people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, the no
Access
locking.
service.
I think that's a new fashion.
Yeah, in this market, you win by merit, not lock-in.
Yeah, I like that.
Wow, I like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, so just for the millions of listeners on this video here, is Evo? What is Eve? Oh, they're going to hear Eve OS and they're going to go another operating system, or is this a different Linux distribution, or what is that?
It's fundamentally, it's very curated. So Eve OS, think of it as like the equivalent of do for edge computing, IoT Edge, etc. What Android did for mobile. And so Eve isn't just Linux. Android isn't just Linux either. It's got JVMs, all that kind of stuff. Eve has an embedded hypervisor, so it supports virtual machines in addition to native Docker containers, in addition to any runtime, whether it's Kubernetes, Azure IoT Edge, Greengrass, you name it. Because it starts with VMs first, you can do all kinds of cool stuff in terms of like IO virtualization. You can shut off ports because it's bare metal. You can do distributed firewall. Make sure this app can only talk to that back end. It's kind of more of a universal option than just one Linux. And guess what? If you like Ubuntu or you like Yocto, that's what you qualified, we'll run it as a guest OS, no problem. So instead of starting with containers, Eve, we started as a community with VMs, and also you can deploy Windows-based apps in it. So you could deploy a
Windows.
Here's a great example. In surveillance, the incumbents are Windows-based virtual video surveillance apps. Genetech, Milestone, they've been doing this for years. They have massive SI channels. Right. And then you got all the new kids on the block that are doing AI, modern containers, cool facial recognition, license plate detection, but they don't have the channel. Eve OS can basically be the transition. You run your Windows-based VMS today, give you visibility that you never had as a small SI doing a bunch of chain stores. Because today you basically drop in the box and you leave and you never see it again. You might as well put it on a milk carton. Have you seen me? Because the data center stuff's too expensive, for managing these distributed boxes. And then you can start deploying, modern containerized, machine learning, whatever apps on top over time. You have to help with that legacy to modern transition, and that's why it was so important. We thought to build something that can do both.
Yeah. By the way, you committed a huge no-no on our show, man.
What's that?
No 90s boy bands. What's this with New Kids on the Block?
Oh, the New Kids on the Block? Oh, no, that's what we're doing.
Only here. Rock and roll, man.
On again is we're
you believe that, Ron? See?
Yeah, we like
that's
rap
what
music
happens.
too.
That's what happens.
But Leonard, we like rap music too, right?
I know, yeah.
Yes.
Gangster rap only, though.
Yes.
We only do hardcore stuff.
I suggested a jingle for today. I thought I think it has been played on my suggested playlist for today or not?
Oh, yeah, Daft Punk? No.
Daft Punk.
Let me hear it.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear you playing Daft Punk with your guitar. Come on.
Good luck with that.
Next week.
Jason, you got Daft Punk down?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't.
Does he look like a Daft Punk kind of guy? No.
Yep,
Sure.
he does.
Just the idea of I'm going to play Daft Punk on my guitar.
Do I look like a gangster rap kind of
I
girl?
was just about to say.
I can.
Just never know.
Yeah.
I can practice that along with my scissor kicks. For
He's just waiting for a one more time.
Normally I do all my own stuff. Like I probably played Every Rose Has Its Thorn 4 times in my life at this point. Yeah.
That was great, man. Hey, so I'm out of coffee. I think we want to open the floor up to some folks who want to come up and be part of the conversation here. But Jason, hey man, it's great finally having you on. I know we can't hear you, but it was great having you on. We'll have you on again sometime on a different topic. And to everyone who's listening, please check us out at www.iotcoffeetalk.com. Squash the subscribe button and like. And what else do you do?
Like us on TikTok.
Oktoberfest of Things. Remember that.
All right.
Yeah. Rock and roll, everyone. All right, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Bye, guys.